Hey guys, this is Gamer Cal. Welcome to another Pokemon trading card game video here. This time I'm going to be going over 3 of my current favorite decks in our Aquapolis draft testing. So we're in the Neo On format, so Neo Genesis through to currently Aquapolis. Skyridge is also historically in this format, we just haven't got there yet because obviously we didn't play last week because it was Christmas Day on the day that we would play. So, you know, that would have been very silly. We don't want people to have to feel like they have to play on that. We probably will play on New Year's this week, this Saturday coming, but we'll just have to see. But before then, we've got plenty to look at. And I literally have like more than 15 decks so far. I haven't edited all of them, but I just want to quickly showcase here. Yeah, there's a few which have not been edited from the previous round, but even accounting for that, there's like 12 decks here that I've been making just for this one, and I still have plenty of other ideas I can make. This is a ridiculously diverse format, and honestly, I feel like I've mostly drafted exceptionally well to create a lot of these cool ideas. So, we're gonna go over like my 3 sort of current favorite ones here, and the first one is using Electrode. So, I was always curious about this one, didn't know if it was going to be any good, and I did miss the partners in Aquapolis that would have been really good for it, but I've managed to put together some stuff from other sets here, including one trade for the Raikou over here, and it's turned out pretty well. So, let's go over this one, see what we can do. So, Electrode as a Pokemon, if it is your active, you flip a coin, and if you get heads, you take a lightning energy from your discard pile, attach it to one of your Pokemon. This is functionally the same idea as Neo Genesis Typhlosion, except it has to be active, and it is not locked to being on a fire Pokemon like Typhlosion is. So you could, in theory, power up the Dodrio here. You generally won't, but there may be some matchups where you do, because the Dodrio, honestly, being fighting resistant can actually help a lot. And it's not lightning too, which everything else in the deck is. The attack is actually worth looking at as well. Swift only does 30 damage, but it only takes 2 energy, so flip a heads on the Super Dynamo and then manually attach for turn. This thing just attacks on its own, and it can't hit for weakness that sucks, but it also doesn't get affected by resistance, Pokepowers, Pokebodies, or any other effects on defending Pokemon, like Metal Energy. So this is actually pretty good in certain matchups. It's really good for chipping away at things that have got like 4 Metal Energy on them. It's pretty good for dealing with the Jumpluff, was the main one I played against for it, where Jumpluff actually can null all damage. Haunter would be the same idea, where like if you flip heads on it, it nulls all effects of the attack. Swift just goes straight through that. But it's also good for, say, Exoskeleton on Metapod, or I forget if that's what it's called. I think it's like Rock Body or Solid Rock or something that's on the Golem, but same idea of reducing damage passively, right? Doesn't happen with this. So that's really cool. Electrode does get in because 30 is enough to hit for the baby stuff. We are still going to play the 2 Cleffer in here, even though I don't like having it on the bench still. If the opponent doesn't KO this thing, then it can clog up the bench a bit. We'll get to that later on. But the main disadvantage for this is that it has to be in the active spot to do its thing. So normally, you'd be limited to only using this once per turn. However, it, along with everything that isn't Zapdos in this deck, has got a 1 energy retreat cost. So that means that Dodrio, coming in from Legendary Collection, really helps out here. As long as it's on the bench, pay 1 less to retreat your active Pokemon. It itself has got a 0 retreat cost, so it doesn't matter too much there. So you put 1 Dodrio down, that's why we only have a 2-2 line in here, and every single one of your Electrode can switch into another Electrode, and then suddenly you're getting 2 to 4 flips per turn, and accelerating, on average, 2 energy out of the discard, in addition to your manual attachment. This gets things powered up exceptionally quickly, and the things I've chosen for this deck are the Raikou, whose ability, if you attach from hand, you can force the opponent to switch, so you might be able to get them off of their Cleffer in the active, so you can eke for free. And it does 50 for free energy. If Tails, it does 20 to itself, so a little bit annoying, but it also doesn't discard the energy, and 80 HP is pretty big in its own right. So, good stuff with it there, but also, most importantly, Legendary Collection brought back Zapdos from the base set. And this card has always been very powerful, just extremely difficult to get going, right? 4 energy in an energy removal format was never happening. This format can energy remove on a coin flip, but it doesn't matter quite so much when you've got Super Dynamo, right? But the main thing with this is it does 100 damage. Thunderbolt is the main attack that you actually want to use here, because we have ways of getting this out of the active after you've used it, but 100 damage one-hit KOs almost everything in the game. There's a couple of Pokemon that are 120 HP, and Steelix, I guess, is at 110. Metal Energy might mess up some math, but for the most part, you KO whatever you touch. Thunder is also pretty good if you don't need to do more than 60 damage. Like 60 getting a one-shot on quite a lot of Pokemon is nice as well. And yeah, it's just good, right? Like, Flip Tails do 30 to itself is annoying, but 90 HP is also just super big. So, generally it's really good. We don't need more than like 4 attackers in this deck in the end, especially when Electrode itself can attack. So the lines make sense, are too clever. I'm not playing the draw 2 one, it's bad here. The 2-2 Dodrio, because you only ever need 1 out at a time. The Voltorb, I only have 3 of this uncommon one, so I do have to play the Swift one here as well. This one's okay. The only disadvantage really is that it gets one-shot by a Hitmonchan if somebody decides to play that. So that's kind of annoying. But the 4-4 Electrode here, and then 2 each of our attackers. So it's straightforward. You just get, you get as many of these out as you can. You get 1 attacker, 1 Dodrio, and you go to town. As far as the supporters go, or the trainers in general, Double Gust is super good in like every deck just about, but it's especially good here, where the only Pokemon that doesn't retreat for free is Zapdos as soon as you get Dodrio out, and this lets you target down your opponent's biggest threat, the thing they're charging the most energy on, and, Thunderbolt it into oblivion, basically, so that's really good. Lightning Cube is a nice way of using the energy that's attached to either a Raikou that's about to get knocked out, or, Electrode that you've been building up because of Swift. This lets you discard all the energy attached to the lightning Pokemon that you put this on, and then, for every head you flip based on, the amount you discard, you do 40 damage. 40 is a higher multiplier than this usually hits right now. We had 30 from Lieutenant Surge's Electabuzz, and from Neo Genesis Flappy can also do this. But yeah, this is a bit of a higher threshold than we're used to seeing on this, and that's really good. Like 2 flips doing 80 is enough to KO most Pokemon. 3 flips getting 120 is enough to KO everything. So there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with that. 2 Master Ball in here. I initially had more than this, but since we've cut the Pokemon count down a little bit, we kind of needed to cut this down as well. This is Great Ball in the more modern formats, anything from Gen 5 onwards. But really, it's just there for consistency. You do have to find your stage 1s here, so Master Ball is good for that. If you don't find them, but you do find something else you want to keep instead, Pokemon Trader is a great way of allowing you to pick up the Pokemon that you want out of the deck, so that's really good. Professor Elm is still super good in this format. It doesn't let you play any other trainers afterwards, but Shuffle Draw 7 is kind of insane. We want to just have as many ways of like getting a lot of cards out to try and get our evolutions in play. So this works super well. Scoop Up is the big card for this set. I probably would play 4 if I could find space for it, because I do have a 4th one. This is how you recover your Zapdos after you have Thunderbolted. Right? Because even with a Dodrio in play, Zapdos has got a 2 energy retreat cost. It's never getting out the active by itself. So you either Double Gust, or you Scoop Up. And Scoop Up has the advantage of negating damage that the opponents put on Zapdos too. Or that it put on itself with Thunder. So if you can score like 2 knockouts or 1 really tempo-intensive knockout with the Zapdos, and then scoop it back up, put it back down, cycle through your Electrodes recharging it, you're probably going to be able to attack again like 2 turns later. And that's just really, really strong. So 3 Scoop Up in here is super good. Copycat is just amazing in this format. If the opponent eeks and Shuffle Draw 7 ends their turn for attacking, you just get a Shuffle Draw 7 from that. It's really, really powerful. Also just good in general against decks that are aiming to use this card. Juggler is probably the biggest lifeblood for this deck. You discard up to 2 basic energies from your hand to use this. You draw 3 cards if you only discard 1, but you draw 5 cards if you discard 2. One of the biggest issues with this format when it comes to playing a deck that relies on discard acceleration is that we really don't have ways of discarding cards. Nowadays you'd be like, oh, Quick Ball is really easy to do stuff that way, right? Or, you know, discard draw 7 with Professor's Research. We don't have stuff like that. There is no discard in the format, so this is actually really the only way that we can do that. And it's a very good way, but sometimes if you don't draw this early, you just don't have the energy in the discard to accelerate. So that can slow things down a little bit, but a draw 5 is just insane, so no way that we're not playing that card. Pokemon Fan Club comes in here as well. I pulled 3 copies of this in general, very happy with that. Gets any 2 Pokemon, basics and or babies from your deck, puts them onto the bench directly, so Cleffer is, you don't really need to play more than 2 at this point, because you can just search for it with this, which is really good. Also gets your other setup pieces as well, so you could just like Fan Club for Voltorb and Doduo if you already have the Cleffer, or, you know, whichever pieces you need. So that's really strong. And then we've got Town Volunteers as the last trainer card in here, which is effectively Time Capsule, but one-sided and as a supporter card. One of the issues this deck can run into is having to discard too many of its energy, or just not having the capability to accelerate again, because Zapdos doesn't retreat, right? So Town Volunteers, as well as potentially getting Dodrio back if people gust this out, Town Volunteers is your way to get all of your energy back into deck, which we do play 15. 15 is probably about the lowest that I would want to play with the Juggler engine, but I mean, we need a fair few moving pieces in here, and honestly 15 is fine. I've managed to get my attachments reliably enough, I've managed to get energy in the discard reliably enough, and yeah, the deck just flows like really well. One thing I would like to maybe add is either a 4th Scoop Up. I don't think I would add a 2nd Lightning Cube. I do have 2, but I don't think it's necessary, because most of the time we're not really attacking with this sort of card. You know, with the actual discharge here. Maybe Master Ball could be something, like as a 3rd, but with only 18 Pokemon in the deck, it's just below the threshold of where it works like every time, pretty much. So we don't really need it. This deck is super consistent, works really well, and yeah, it's probably my favorite deck so far. Then we move on to what I think is Sai's least favorite deck for me so far, from what he's seen. This doesn't have Dark Gengar because it got a bit too cute, but this Hypno is a right arsehole. So, this deck revolves around Dream Eater as the main thing here. So, Dream Eater for 2 energy, it does 50 damage, but if the opponent isn't asleep, it doesn't do any damage. You can still Nightmare if you can't get the combo running here, but we're going to see a pretty similar pattern to the previous deck here. This Haunter, 1 retreat. This Hypno, 1 retreat. Dodrio comes in perfect. So, what the Hypno does is it makes the opponent automatically go to sleep once during your turn. So the idea is that you retreat from the Haunter to the Hypno, auto-sleep them, then with Dodrio's ability in play, retreat back to the Haunter and do 50 damage, and they're still asleep as well. So they need to wake up with the coin toss to make it work. So it's pretty simple. All this takes is 2 energy, so it's really easy just to get this going. There's not a lot of complexity in this list, but it definitely does work out. We do have Drowsy for long distance hypnosis as well. This is risky because it can make you go to sleep, which is not great. But if you flip heads, the opponent's asleep. If you flip tails, you're asleep. So this can be a way if you don't have like early attacks, or you don't quite have the setup for it, you can just make the opponent go to sleep at that point. Also kind of interesting is that if you have, say, a Ghastly out, and you make the opponent, you like try and make them go to sleep, flip tails, don't worry, just evolve the Ghastly, right? And then you can attack anyway, because you wake up. So it's pretty neat. Speaking on the Ghastly, I don't really know which one is best here. I'm playing this one even though it's got less HP, because I do like the auto sleep on the attack here. Arguably, the paralysis one would be better, but I like the idea of being able to automatically debilitate a baby if I do flip heads on the attack, right? So I don't know. I don't know if there's like a huge difference between them, to be honest. But yeah, pretty straightforward lineup with stuff here. I only have 2 Double Gust in this deck. I should probably play a third one. But right now, I wanted just to max out consistency in here. But arguably, I really should play a third one in here. Everything's low retreat anyway. 4 Master Ball because we do need several stage 1s in this deck. But again, I think you could probably cut one of these to put another Double Gust in. I might do that later on. The usual stuff otherwise, though, most of my draw engines are going to be fairly standard here. 3 Trader, 4 Elm, 3 Copycat. I do have a 4th one in trade now. We'll see that down below. So I will probably... 3 Fan Club as well. What I'll probably do is instead of the 2 Research here, I'm going to play like a 4th Copycat and just 1 Oaks Research. Because what Oaks Research does, if you didn't see before, is just straightforward shuffle draw 5. It's fine, it works pretty well, but Copycat is usually better in this format because you tend to be able to draw more cards than this, since the opponent is going to Eek, right? I don't know, I'll maybe see, because ideally you're trying to stop them from doing Eek because you put them to sleep, so maybe this deck actually doesn't want to play 4 Copycat, but who knows, we'll see. 1 Town Volunteers is going to be standard in basically every deck as a minimum here, because really you do want to have recovery in order to not like run out of resources in these things, right? So you know, it's going to be powerful. And then for the tool cards here, we've got Experience All coming back in. We are a 2 energy attacking deck, so straightforward, right? If you get knocked out and your 0 energy Haunter on the bench has got one of these on it, you keep your energy, one of them, this goes to the discard, and then you just attach 1 for turn and you've got an attacker ready to go. So very good to keep your stuff in play. And then Focus Band, because Haunter is only 70 HP, right? 70 is the cap in this deck, so it's an aggro deck. You want to survive as long as possible, and if a Haunter gets another attack off, again, 50 is enough to 2-shot just about everything that we're going against, so very good card. 13 Psychic Energy rounds this out. Probably the biggest weakness of this deck would be like metal tanking decks, or anything with Pokemon Center in it might be a potential issue. But for the most part, this has got Disruption, it's got very quick damage output, and yeah, if I just swap these around, I think we can take a lot of cheap prizes here too. Notably, there's no Gengar in here because I both do not have the Expedition Gengar, we have not gotten to the Skyridge Gengar yet, and I don't believe the Curse Gengar from Fossil, like the Legendary Collection one, is strong enough to use here. If you could evolve into Dark Gengar from regular Haunter, then obviously I would use that. But we can't, so that's what we've got to deal with. So yep, from the energy acceleration to the low energy but high damage threshold here, to something that's completely different. This is the last deck I tried. I'm a little bit concerned at the damage output of this deck, but overall it seems to work pretty well. So this one revolves around a rather nightmarish combination of Victreebel, who is basically the same Victreebel from Erica. With Fragrance Trap, you flip a coin, if heads it gusts the opponent out. It is Pokemon Reversal, or Catcher nowadays, on Pokemon that you can use once per turn. And its attack is fine too, like 2 Grass Colors, 40, and can burn on a heads flip. That's fine. We do use this for attacking as well because it is the highest damage output we have here. But it combines that with Octillery. So the idea is that you gust out the Pokemon that the opponent definitely doesn't want to be, or is either not ready to attack or doesn't want to stay in, right? And you smokescreen with the Octillery. So it stops them from necessarily attacking next turn, 50-50 on that, and it's good damage, right? 40 is enough to 3-hit KO everything, 2-hit KO most stuff as well, like 80 HP is pretty respectable to be hitting down in 2 hits. And then the ability is just crazy here. If Octillery is active, whenever the defending Pokemon retreats, you discard all energy attached to it when it goes to the bench, no matter what the retreat cost is. So you are trying to bring in something which is like not wanting to risk a coin flip, and if they don't have a gust or a switch option, they are forced to get rid of every single energy in order to retreat out. So you're trying to stop them from having like a ton of attachments ready to attack on whatever they want, right? Whilst chipping away at them. It's pretty strong. The problem is the damage output's not super high here, right? And free energy without acceleration is a little expensive to go on, but it works surprisingly well. So once again, we got the 2 Cleffa, not really going to go on with that too much. I don't like the draw 2 Cleffa in most decks anymore because we have like search for this Cleffa, and we also have just general support stuff, which is good. So I really don't want to play more than 2 here. We have the separate Bellsprouts. I actually only have 2 copies of the uncommon one. It has more HP, but its attacks are more expensive. However, it's also fire weak, whereas this Bellsprout inexplicably is psychic weak. I don't know why, and I'm not sure if that actually makes enough of a difference here, but realistically it's just because I don't have 4 of this one. However, Poison Fine I guess could be sort of okay. This one can do some damage, unlike the other ones, so I guess it's fine. Weeping Bell's worth talking about because growth is actually crazy. For any energy, attach up to 2 grass from your hand to the Weeping Bell, so this can actually get you set up in like 2 turns, right? Double Razor Leaf is also fine. It doesn't cost a lot of energy to use, so it's decent. And then the Remoraid I've chosen is not the highest HP one, but it does have 0 retreat, which I figured was more important for this deck. Sharpshooting, if you flip heads, snipes 20 on any of your opponent's Pokemon, so that could be useful. Probably more useful than Fury Strikes, which is on the other 0 retreat Remoraid, which is just Fury Swipes, right? Flip 3 coins, 10 damage per heads. I think this one's overall better, because if the opponent does get to the bench, you can snip the last bit of HP away from them, which is pretty good. And then I added Cypher recently, because Cypher is a 2 energy attacker, right? This is something the deck lacks, is quicker attacking. So Cypher being 40 for 2 is respectable enough. It can't attack in consecutive turns unless you bench it, but we do have ways around that. Like, we've got plenty of switch in this deck, so I think it's okay. So yeah, we're doing only 40 in this deck. Burn can sometimes do a bit more, but really it's about the disruption aspect here, right? Victreebel being able to bring in anything that you want to attack is very solid. And I think this is a cool partnership, right? Victreebel is also like very weak to grass, like fire stuff, right? And even metal's kind of a hard matchup regardless, because you don't do that much damage. But like this is really, really good against the fire decks, because Octillery just dumps them, right? So you've got an option to deal with Victreebel's weakest matchup. So it's kind of neat. Otherwise, the usual stuff here: Triple Trader, Free Elm. I do play, 4 Elm even. I do play Free Switch in this deck. We don't play Double Gust because we already have Gusting in Victreebel. So just regular Switch is better here, because the disadvantage of Double Gust is the opponent gets to choose what you bring in. So that's obviously not amazing, and this is our way of dealing with that. We also have 2 Water Cube in here, because it is a little bit expensive to attack with Octillery. So this gives you Sharpshooting from Remoraid, but without the coin toss. And that's pretty effective, especially if you do have just a 2 energy or a 1 energy Octillery, right? You can snip the opponent and still, you know, get the benefits of attacking and suction cups and all of that fun stuff. So it's pretty good. 4 Copycat went into this deck because I did initially have 3 Research in here, but Copycat is the better one to have around in general. And then the last main card in here is Goldberry, because this deck does like to tank hits a little bit, and Goldberry is a very effective way of keeping these guys in the game a little bit more. 90 HP is big enough where you can often turn 2-hit KOs into 3-hit KOs, etc. So pretty solid. As far as the energy lineup goes, 5 water is only a little bit sketchy because, you know, we do need water to attack with these, but we only need 1. So I don't think it's too bad, to be honest. There's not really energy removal in this format. Energy removal 2 does exist, but people aren't playing it really, so that's fine. I don't know how many people play, you know, like pulled more than 2, so I think we're okay on that front. And we need more grass because Cypher and Victreebel both need like 2 grass, whereas Octillery only needs 1 water. So 10 grass, 5 water energy, and then the last one is a warp energy. This is effectively the 4th switch for the deck, except it does give you an energy, so you are able to do stuff like Eek if you get it on turn 1. So I think it's probably better to play the warp here. So that's what we do. It is mandatory, however, if you do attach this to active, you have to switch. So yeah, it's a little bit of skill to play with this card, but overall it's pretty good. So yeah, those are effectively my 3 favorite decks of the moment. We've got the energy recharging and just explosive one-hit KO potential of the Zapdos. We've got the sleep, very quick, aggressive disruption of the Horns of Hypno stuff. And then we've got the tactical trapping, we shall say, of Smokescreen plus the Victreebel Fragrance Trap stuff here is quite devastating when it actually pulls off. So, 3 cool things to look at. I'm probably going to try and do like another one of these later on when I've got some more decks. I can even just show one that I am working on at the moment is the Umbreon over here. I really want to make this work, but I haven't quite made this deck strong enough yet for what I would like. This card is actually really good and beautiful artwork on it too, but I need to work on this a little bit more, so maybe we'll do another like deck showcase or something later on in the week. But so far, these have been my favorites. So hopefully you have learned some fun stuff with this format. There's so many different decks you can play. Thank you very much for watching this. Hopefully we will see you around for the actual battle stuff. And yeah, hope everyone had a great Christmas and have a good New Year.